The noise was subtle, almost imperceptible. 3:47 in the morning when my eyes opened in the dark room. 25 years working for the government taught me never to ignore my instincts. Something was off. The creak of the living room window confirmed my suspicions. Someone was forcing their way in. I slid out of bed silently, my bare feet touching the cold floor. My home in Villaggio Residential had always been considered the epitome of safety in gated communities. Ironic. Subscribe to the channel and leave your like to get access to more stories like this. I grabbed my cell phone and quietly activated the security app. The indoor camera showed 3 middle-aged men wearing jackets with the Residents' Council logo. I immediately recognized the leader of the group, Jonathan Parker, 58, the council's chairman, known for his intimidating stance at monthly meetings. Parker whispered to the others, "The safe must be in the office. Davis hid documents that we need to retrieve before anyone else finds them." I backed toward the closet, where I kept a small monitor connected to the security system. They didn't know it, but every move they made was being recorded and transmitted not only to my phone but directly to the National Intelligence Center. A leftover benefit from my years as a senior security analyst. I watched as they rifled through my office, destroying books and documents. Parker seemed increasingly frustrated. He knows too much about our operations. If those documents fall into the authorities' hands, our whole scheme falls apart. We need to find the safe. My cell phone display flashed, the message I'd been waiting for. Team en route. Estimated time, 4 minutes. Stay safe. While the intruders were ransacking my home, I remembered the day I questioned the abusive fees imposed by the council. Parker had looked at me with an arrogant smile. "Mr. Davis, you signed the contract. Our rules, our penalties." The sound of shattering glass brought me back to the present. In seconds, red and blue strobe lights illuminated the windows. The response was faster than expected. Parker's face turned to pure confusion when an amplified voice came from outside. "Agent Cooper from the National Intelligence Agency. The premises are surrounded. Come out with your hands visible." The 3 men froze. Their expressions changed from arrogance to sheer disbelief in a matter of seconds. "What do you mean, National Intelligence Agency? It's just a breach of internal regulations," Parker shouted, sweat dripping down his forehead. I stepped out of my hiding place. "Burglary isn't exactly a regulation breach, Parker." The door was kicked in and federal agents stormed my living room. In an instant, the 3 men were on their stomachs, handcuffed. Agent Cooper, a 43-year-old man with a military bearing, stepped forward. "Mr. Davis, are you all right?" "Yes, I am. Thank you for the quick response. Your security system is still registered on our priority network. Once it detected the invasion, we were notified immediately." He glanced at the 3 men being led away. "Can you explain who these individuals are?" In the hours that followed, I gave a detailed statement about the growing hostilities from the Residents' Council. The abusive fees that quickly turned into threats for anyone who questioned them. The mysterious accidents at the homes of residents who had confronted Parker. 2 days later, my lawyer Sarah Johnson appeared at my door. At 39, her reputation for being meticulous and relentless preceded her. "Mr. Davis, what we have here is much bigger than a simple home invasion," Sarah explained, spreading documents on my table. "We found evidence linking the Residents' Council to money laundering operations. They used fines and extraordinary fees as a front to legitimize money from illegal sources. The documents showed suspicious transfers, properties acquired in the name of third parties, oversized contracts for condominium maintenance." "And why did they specifically break into my house?" I asked. "Apparently, your detailed analysis of the council's finances started raising red flags. Parker discovered your professional background and assumed you were gathering evidence. And I really was," I confessed, revealing the flash drive I kept in my safe with all the financial discrepancies I had documented over the past few months. Sarah's face lit up as she examined the documents. "This is pure gold for the case, Mr. Davis. With your testimony and this evidence, we can take down Parker and the entire scheme. The federal courtroom was packed that Monday morning. I felt all eyes on me as I walked down the central corridor. To the left, sitting in an impeccable suit that probably cost more than most cars in the parking lot, was Jonathan Parker. Next to him, his lawyer Richard Stevens, 62, known for defending corrupt politicians and businessmen with questionable reputations. Their confident looks exuded a certainty of impunity. "Don't let them intimidate you," Sarah whispered as we sat down. "They rely on fear to keep their scheme going." Christopher Williams, the prosecutor assigned to the case, was a 47-year-old man known for his formidable ability to dismantle defense arguments. As he organized his notes, Judge Henry Montgomery entered the room. Everyone stood up. Case number for 7829, the State versus Jonathan Parker and Associates. Charges: home invasion, attempted theft, extortion, criminal conspiracy, money laundering, and obstruction of justice. The judge's voice echoed through the silent room. "You may be seated." The trial began with the reading of the charges. The evidence was compelling: security recordings of the invasion, statements from other residents victimized by the scheme, inconsistent financial documents, suspicious bank transfers, and my own testimony. When it was my turn to testify, I felt the weight of the moment. It wasn't just about my invaded home, it was about all the residents silenced by fear. "Mr. Davis, please recount for the court the events of the early morning of May 17th, Christopher requested. I described in detail how I woke to the sound of the invasion, how I identified the three men in residence council uniforms, and how I heard Parker mentioning incriminating documents. And why, in your opinion, was Mr. Parker so interested in those supposed documents?" the prosecutor asked. In the months leading up to that night, I began noticing suspicious patterns in the condo's financial reports. Fees that appeared out of nowhere, exorbitant fines for minor infractions, maintenance contracts priced above market value with newly formed companies. When I questioned these irregularities at a residents' meeting, Parker publicly ridiculed me. Richard Stevens immediately stood up. "Objection, Your Honor. The witness is speculating about my client's motives." Overruled, the judge replied. "The witness is recounting facts he personally observed." Continue, Mr. Davis. After that meeting, I started gathering data. I analyzed financial reports from the past 5 years, requested copies of contracts, cross-referenced information. My training as an analyst allowed me to spot discrepancies that ordinary people might have missed. I presented the court with a chart showing the disproportionate increase in condominium fees relative to inflation and actual services provided. Another document revealed how fines for infractions had become the condo's main revenue source, something completely atypical of normal administrations. "And what happened to the residents who refused to pay these abusive fees?" asked Christopher. First came threats of lawsuits. Then, mysterious accidents. Mrs. Rodriguez's car was vandalized 2 weeks after she questioned a fine. Mr. Thompson's house suffered an inexplicable flood after he organized a petition against the fee hike. No one could prove a connection, but the message was clear. During cross-examination, Stevens tried to undermine my credibility. "Mr. Davis, do you have any training in condominium management?" he asked. "No, but I have 25 years of experience in data analysis and detecting financial fraud." "And don't you think the council has the right to enforce the internal regulations, even if it displeases some residents?" he pressed. "Enforcing rules is different from abusing them for illicit purposes." When I discovered that the companies hired for the condo services belonged to relatives of council members, it became clear this wasn't just administrative strictness. The turning point came when Christopher called Agent Cooper to the stand. "Agent Cooper, what did your team uncover when investigating the residents' council finances?" the prosecutor asked. "We identified a sophisticated money laundering scheme. The excessive fines and extraordinary fees were just the tip of the iceberg. The money was funneled to shell companies pretending to provide services to the condo. Then, the funds were cycled back cleaner into personal accounts linked to council members." Cooper then revealed that the scheme had moved about $12 million over 5 years. The room burst into murmurs of indignation. Were there other condominiums involved in this scheme? Christopher inquired. Yes. Our investigation uncovered similar patterns in at least 7 other high-end condominiums managed by a property management firm connected to Mr. Parker. Next came the testimony of Jessica Martinez, a former council secretary who decided to cooperate with the prosecution in exchange for immunity. Mr. Parker demanded that I alter the numbers in the financial reports presented to the residents. Jessica testified, visibly nervous. He said no one really looked at the numbers anyway and that we needed the money for special operations. She then presented secret recordings of meetings where Parker instructed council members on how to intimidate troublesome residents and distribute the misappropriated money. On the 3rd day of the trial, I was taken aback when I saw Parker smiling during a break. Sarah noticed my unease. He's bluffing, she explained. It's just a tactic to look confident, but our sources in the prosecution say the defense is desperate. When Stevens presented his final defense, his main argument was that it was merely an administrative misunderstanding, and that breaking into my residence was just a routine inspection as provided for in the regulations. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, Stevens began in a didactic tone. My client was simply performing his duty as council chair. Even if there were excesses in enforcing the regulations, that does not rise to the serious crimes he's charged with. At worst, it's an administrative infraction. Christopher, in his rebuttal, was relentless. The defense wants us to believe that breaking into someone's home at 3 in the morning is just a routine inspection. They want us to ignore the millions siphoned off, the threats, and the meticulously built criminal network. Mr. Parker isn't a diligent administrator, he's a criminal who used respectability to extort and threaten innocent people. The jury retired for deliberation on Friday afternoon. They returned just 3 hours later, a sign Sarah took as a positive omen. The jury finds defendant Jonathan Parker guilty on all counts. I felt a deep relief wash over me. Parker remained impassive, but I noticed his hands trembling slightly on the table. At the sentencing hearing a week later, Judge Montgomery spared no words. Mr. Parker, you betrayed the trust of an entire community. You turned an institution meant for the common good into a machine of oppression and organized crime. This court sentences you to 25 years in federal prison without the possibility of parole. After leaving the courthouse, Agent Cooper approached me. Mr. Davis, we need to talk privately. In a secluded room, Cooper revealed the full extent of the criminal operation. What we uncovered goes far beyond your condominium. We identified an interstate network involving residents' councils in at least 6 states. We're talking about a sophisticated criminal organization that used the administrative structure of luxury condos to launder drug money and political corruption. The revelations were staggering. The scheme had branches reaching into city halls, law firms specializing in real estate, and even state regulatory bodies. Parker was just a middle manager, Cooper explained. Someone much more powerful is coordinating this national network. And now that Parker has felt the full weight of justice, he started talking. Sarah, who was present, asked, is he cooperating with the authorities? He provided names, dates, meeting locations. He mentioned local politicians, a state judge, and executives of a national construction firm as part of the scheme. In exchange, he's asking for special protection in prison. I realized then that the victory we celebrated was only the beginning of something much larger. The real battle against the criminal organization hidden behind condo clout and internal regulations was just starting. We'll need your cooperation in the next phases of the investigation, Cooper continued. Your experience as an analyst and your inside knowledge of how their scheme worked will be invaluable. I looked at the documents spread across the table, photos of secret meetings, diagrams showing the flow of money, lists of affected condominiums across the country. I understood that my life was not going back to normal anytime soon. You can count on me, I said, feeling the weight of responsibility. If this scheme is as big as it seems, we have to see it through. The weeks following the verdict completely turned my life upside down. Suddenly, my phone wouldn't stop ringing. Journalists wanted interviews, residents from other condos were asking for advice, and the federal prosecutor's office scheduled meetings almost daily. My home, once a quiet refuge, became the epicenter of an investigation that grew by the day. Parker's cooperation is yielding results beyond our expectations, Agent Cooper commented during breakfast at a small restaurant 3 blocks from the federal courthouse. We chose the place for its discretion, no cameras, no onlookers, just staff used to serving clients who preferred privacy. Cooper slid a file across the table. Inside were photos of a man in an impeccable suit stepping out of a limousine. Raymond Whitmore, 64. Officially, a condominium management consultant. In reality, according to Parker, the mastermind behind the entire national scheme. I studied the photo closely. The man had that kind, grandfatherly look, the type who hands out candy to kids in the park. Hard to believe that behind that friendly smile was the commander of a multi-million-dollar criminal operation. Parker claims Whitmore developed the method nearly 2 decades ago, Cooper continued. First, they target high-end condos with fragile or indebted management. Then, they put their trusted people into the council elections. Once inside, they implement what they call the financial optimization protocol, which is basically extorting residents and laundering dirty money, I added. Exactly. And the brilliance of the scheme is its apparent legality. Everything is in the internal regulations, only hidden in obscure clauses that no one reads. The fines start small and then grow exponentially. Anyone who complains gets subtle harassment. In some condos, they even used security cameras to monitor the routines of troublesome residents. At that moment, Sarah arrived carrying an even thicker folder. A usually calm face showed signs of fatigue. She had been practically working non-stop ever since the case blew up. "Good morning, gentlemen. I have some news you need to see." She spread documents on the table, bank statements, international transfers, real estate contracts. Parker wasn't lying about the scope of the scheme. We traced about $87 million in suspicious transactions over the last 7 years, involving 32 condos in 6 states. And that's only what we've documented, the real figure probably exceeds 200 million. Cooper whistled softly, clearly impressed. And what about the political connections? That's where it gets really interesting. Sarah pointed to a series of photos showing Whitmore at dinners, graduations, and charity events. Next to him were well-known figures in local and state politics. Hampshire's Mayor Thomas Green, Councilman Stanley Peterson, Judge Catherine Morris, who, interestingly, dismissed 3 cases against residents' councils in recent years. As I absorbed the information, my cell phone buzzed. It was a message from an unknown number. "You open Pandora's box. There's still time to back off. Think about your safety." I showed the message to Cooper, who immediately sent it to the tech team. "We'll trace its origin, but they probably used a disposable phone. This just confirms we're on the right track, and that they're worried." That afternoon, I received an unexpected visit. Richard Stevens, the lawyer who once defended Parker, appeared at my door. He looked dejected, different from the confident man we saw in court. "Mr. Davis, I need to talk to you," he said, glancing nervously around. Not as Parker's lawyer, but as someone who was also deceived. Reluctantly, I invited him in, but kept my phone recorder on in my pocket, a precaution I've learned to take these days. When I agreed to defend Parker, I genuinely believed it was just an administrative overreach, Stevens began, turning down the coffee I offered. I only realized the true nature of the scheme during the trial, when the evidence piled up. Even so, my ethical duty as a lawyer was to defend my client as best as I could. "Why are you telling me this now?" "Because yesterday, 2 men I'd never seen before visited me. They said they represented associates concerned with the investigations. They suggested I might help smooth things over, perhaps by discrediting Parker's testimony." He ran his hand through his graying hair, visibly disturbed. "In 40 years of practicing law, I've never been explicitly threatened like this." "What did you say to them?" "I told them my work with Parker was over and that I had no more professional obligations to him or his associates. They smiled and said it was a pity you no longer value your reputation and your health." Then Stevens pulled a flash drive from his pocket. Here are correspondences between Parker and other clients I represented over the years. I noticed a pattern I hadn't seen before: all condominium managers, all using similar financial optimization systems. I was their instrument without even knowing it, Mr. Davis. I handed the flash drive directly to Cooper that night, along with the recording of our conversation. The agent confirmed that witness protection had already been activated to ensure the lawyer's safety. Stevens just became our most valuable witness, Cooper explained. He has legal credibility that Parker could never hope to have. 3 days later, the operation dubbed Safe Condominium was launched simultaneously in 4 states. Dozens of search and seizure warrants were executed at homes, law offices, and the administrative headquarters of condos. 17 people were arrested, including Raymond Whitmore, who was caught trying to board his private jet bound for a country with no extradition treaty with the United States. The morning after the operation, Sarah visited me with newspapers. Criminal Counsel, the biggest real estate extortion scheme in the US, was the headline. "We did it," she said, allowing herself a rare smile of satisfaction. "Not yet," I replied, pointing to a smaller photo on the side of the page. It showed Mayor Thomas Green at a press conference, declaring he was shocked by the revelations and promising total cooperation with the investigations. He's on Parker's list. He received almost $1 million in illegal contributions from companies linked to the scheme. If we can prove he knew about the illicit source of that money. "We're working on it," Sarah interrupted. But politicians are harder to take down than condominium managers. They have resources, connections, and media influence. A week later, I was summoned to the Federal Detention Center for an unexpected meeting. Jonathan Parker had requested my presence. I found him drastically changed. The man who once exuded arrogance now looked diminished, huddled in his orange jumpsuit. His hands, once so firm while threatening residents, trembled as he held the phone against the glass partition. "Thank you for coming, Davis," he began, avoiding eye contact. "I didn't expect you'd agree to see me." "Just professional curiosity," I replied simply. "What do you want from me?" "To warn you that you don't understand what you're getting into. Whitmore is just another pawn, like me. The real bosses, you have no idea who they are." "Then tell me." Parker glanced nervously at the guards, then leaned closer to the glass. "I can't. They have reach even here. I've already received the message: if I talk, my ex-wife and children will suffer the consequences. We can offer protection for your family," I argued. "Like they offered to Stevens?" Parker smiled bitterly. My stomach dropped. The information about Stevens's cooperation was supposed to be confidential. "He's missing, you know? Officially in a safe location, but no one has been able to reach him in 3 days." I left the meeting deeply disturbed. I immediately called Cooper, who confirmed the alarming news. Stevens had left the protection program on his own, leaving only a note saying he would find another solution. The next morning, the news was dominated by headlines: "Ex-lawyer in extortion scheme found dead in motel." The preliminary police report suggested suicide, but neither Cooper nor I believed that version. Stevens's death set off an unexpected twist. Parker, fearing he'd be next, decided to cooperate fully. This time, he demanded maximum protection and transfer to a military facility. In a recorded video testimony, he finally revealed the full extent of the operation. The scheme wasn't just about extorting residents and laundering money. It also involved systematic bribery of municipal inspectors, manipulation of bidding on public works around the condos, and even corporate espionage using the complex's security infrastructure. "Luxury condos are the perfect disguise," Parker explained in the video. "No one really questions what happens behind well-kept walls and guarded entrances. It's the ideal place to move money and information without raising suspicions." More shocking, however, was his final revelation: the entire operation answers to a higher council made up of 7 people. I only knew 3 of them: Whitmore, State Senator James Harrison, and the Assistant Attorney General, Martin Coleman. The silence that followed his revelation in the task force meeting room was almost palpable. Coleman was the direct superior of Christopher, the prosecutor in our case. In the days that followed, the investigation had to be completely reorganized. Coleman was quietly removed under the pretext of medical leave, while an independent team looked into the allegations. On a rainy afternoon, while I was reviewing documents at home, Cooper and Sarah visited me. Their faces showed they had significant news. "Parker's testimony has been confirmed," Cooper announced bluntly. "We found bank transfers linking Coleman to the scheme. But we need your help again, Davis." "For what?" "A new grand jury will be convened next week to assess the charges against Coleman, Harrison, and 4 other members of this so-called higher council. Your testimony will be crucial in establishing how it all began." Sarah added, "This case has turned into the largest investigation into systemic corruption in the last 20 years. What began with an invasion of your home has uncovered a scheme that affected thousands across the country." Cooper placed his hand on my shoulder. "I know you've been through a lot, but we need you with us until the end. This is our chance to dismantle not just a criminal scheme, but an entire system of corruption rooted in our society." I looked out the window, watching the rain fall relentlessly on the garden I used to be so proud of when I bought the house. Ironically, the invasion of that private space reconnected me with my public purpose. "When does the new trial start?" I asked, already knowing the answer. "In 10 days, Sarah replied. "It'll be tougher than the last one. These men have real power, connections, and unlimited resources. They'll fight with everything they've got. Then we'll have to be smarter," I concluded. "I'm in. Until the end." As they left, I received a message on my cell phone. It was from a newly formed group of condo residents victimized by the scheme. "Thanks for showing us we can fight back. We'll be in court to support you." I realized that the real trial was just beginning. It wasn't only about my invaded home or Parker anymore. It was about restoring trust in institutions corrupted by those who were supposed to protect them. Subscribe to the channel and leave your like to get access to more stories like this. The rain finally stopped, leaving that characteristic scent of a new beginning in the air. The battle would be long, but for the first time in weeks I felt we were on the right track.